It's been a growing concern in the Oklahoma oil and gas industry for close to a decade now. Old school vertical drilling competing with the dominant newer technologies of horizontal drilling. And once again, there are calls for the state legislature to get involved.
I took all these.
You took all these?
Yeah.
Dewey Bartlett Jr. is the president of Keener Oil, a company brought to Oklahoma in 1910 by his grandfather. 109 years later, he's seen several booms and too many busts.
Oh, boy. It'd be a big number. I've weathered three pretty good ones. But I'd say the number would probably be, it could be 10, 15.
In this case, it's out in West Texas. The oil patch, in my entire career, 35 years I think it is, it's been a roller coaster ride.
Dewey Bartlett and Don Burdick have more in common than just their initials. They're good friends, longtime oilmen, but each produces their product in very different ways.
He's a vertical guy, I'm a horizontal guy, and I think a couple of oil men sitting down being honest and upfront with each other can solve problems. We don't need to burden a legislature.
Bartlett agrees a handshake deal still goes a long way in the oil patch. But as the president of the Oklahoma Energy Producers Alliance, or OEPA, which represents the interests of vertical drillers, he is pushing for legislative or legal remedies to compensate vertical drillers when their wells are damaged by fracking.
Sometimes there's difficulty getting a way to absolve and to rectify that damage without having to go to court, which is always a terrible option in my opinion.
This animation, produced by the OEPA, helps explain the problem. When horizontal wells are drilled near vertical wells, the fracking that is part of that procedure can damage the vertical wells and make them economically unproductive. According to the OEPA, that happens 90% of the time when a horizontal well is dug within a quarter of a mile of a vertical well, a statistic that Don Burdick does not believe is accurate.
I struggle to believe that's completely accurate. I'd like to see it and look at it and then give you a better response on that. Yeah, Culberson.
Don is the CEO of Oliphant Energy in Tulsa. His company is backed by an equity partner that puts up the enormous capital needed to pay for these far more expensive horizontal wells.
2 miles of hole drilled down and then 2 miles out, you're talking $10, $12 million, depending on where you are.
A vertical well is far cheaper to produce, anywhere from $250,000 to $750,000. But these wells produce far less oil, jobs, and tax revenue to the state.
You're effectively creating an enormous business that employs 200 to 300 different contractors, hundreds of people.
Preliminary figures for 2018 report 825 well completions in Oklahoma. 788 of them are producing horizontal wells, and just 37 of them are vertical. Clearly, the horizontal producers are the driving force in Oklahoma's oil patch.
We're the ones creating the jobs. We're the ones investing the dollars. The new investments.
State Treasurer Randy McDaniel says gross production taxes in January were just over $100 million. That's a hefty number, but still the lowest total since the incentive tax rate was raised from 2% to 5% last year. Production costs and higher tax rates has led to fewer wells being drilled, and many times that means areas where vertical wells are already operating.
We were approached recently by a husband and wife in their late 80s. Had been residents of northern Oklahoma for their entire lives. He retired many, many years ago from a small oil company that he had created, and he had about 15 oil wells, mostly oil wells, that were his retirement. And unfortunately, a few wells were drilled near him, horizontal wells, and they destroyed practically every well he had.
Both Bartlett and Burdick doubt that any far-reaching bills will be considered during this current session. And Bartlett concedes efforts to get new laws in the books last year failed to get out of committee.
I don't think there is majority support for anything that's going to create a big conflict.
There is an obvious economic incentive to protecting the interests of the horizontal drillers. Almost every Oklahoman is impacted in some way by the industry's continued success. Oil stocks may be part of your 401k. And many pension plans are dependent on oil and gas royalties. The roads we drive on, the teachers who educate our children, all rely to some degree on oil and gas tax revenues. And that makes it essential that horizontal and vertical drillers find, ironically, common ground.
We used to always get along and be able to compromise and come up with a good plan that we can get along with, but it's been more difficult this time.
We do need to be cognizant of that, understand how we impact them, and make sure that we don't do them harm. But I think that's something we can do without major regulation.